Lead from the front, which is lead by example. Take care of your people. That means take care of your bosses, take care of your peers, and take care of the people that work for you. And attitudes are infectious.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nick Fialka.
Hey, pilot, welcome back to Ready for Pushback. I'm Nick Fialka. I'm stoked you're here. Thanks for watching on the old YouTubes, or if you're on the podcast side of the house and listening while you're on a run. I hope it's great. If you're on your way to work, listen, don't worry about this traffic. It'll lighten up here just around the corner. Hey guys, I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that you give me the chance to bring this show to you. And today I am talking to a friend of mine. His name is Jonathan Songer. He flies for Kalitta 2, which we'll get into that in a little bit, but they're an ACMI contract cargo carrier. And we talk about what it's like to fly for that company and kind of dive into that world. And then we pivot and talk about what it is to have gratitude and for making a positive impact for the people around you. And that's what today is all about. That positive impact, like those are the things you can do to make yourself better. We talked about getting inertia and what are the things that you can do to set yourself apart. Listen to Jonathan, like it's such a good conversation. And I know you're going to get a lot out of this, but I want you to think a lot about how you can take these things and Jonathan's passion and how you can implement them in your life and the things you do every single day. So that's just it. All right. If you have a chance to give us a review, I love that. I appreciate what you guys have been saying on Apple Podcasts. Just write a review on there. That's super helpful. Helps people find the podcast. If you're on YouTube, that like and subscribe thing. That's awesome too. You guys are the best. I'm thankful for you. I'm grateful for you. So sit back, relax. Let's get ready for Pushback. Hey, pilot. Did you just get a new conditional job offer? Are you getting out of the military and going to move your family across the country? Are you going to move in base somewhere, or are you going to go out to find that second home that you've been looking for? Well, I want you to stop right now, pick up the phone, and call Marty and the team at Trident Home Loans. It's an organization that's run by pilots. They understand pilot pay. They understand contracts. They understand military. They have the best VA loans in the United States. Marty and his team have been doing mortgages for years. They've been doing my mortgages for years. I trust him and his team more than any other organization. I challenge you to get a better deal anywhere else. Go ahead, reach out, get a mortgage quote, and then call Marty and his team. They will walk you through the process and show you how competitive their rates are. So go right now, tridenthomeloans.com, and check them out. All right, Jonathan Songer, what's up, my man? How are you?
Great to see you, Nick. I am doing phenomenal. Just came out of surgery a couple of days, but I am on the recovery and got about 10 more days before I go back on duty.
Yeah, man, you look like you got in a knife fight. If you're watching on the YouTubes, he's got a big scar across his left side of his head there and just cranking down. We don't have to go into why, but it was not a knife. It was not a knife. It was a doctor's knife. Man. Dude, thank you for joining me today. I am really interested in this conversation because you are my first conversation with a person that flies in the ACMI world. So before we get that going, tell the pilot at home what you've done to get to where you are right now. Give me a short background on you.
So 30-second background. I went to the Citadel on an Air Force ROTC scholarship. I went to joint pilot training with the Navy, flew the T-34, and then I flew the T-1, the Beechjet 400. Went off and flew the KC-135 for 3 years from 2000 to 2003. Then I had a crazy sideways career move, and I went and flew Predator and Reaper drones for the Air Force for the next 20 years. Retired out of the Air Force in 2017, flew these things for 4 years in Afghanistan. And then all of a sudden, had to figure out what I was going to do when I grew up. So I took a year consulting, worked for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Aeronautics Division, and ultimately decided that I missed flying. Crazy time in our industry. I wound up applying to a regional and applied to two supplemental 121 carriers, Coletta and another company called Swift Aero. And
Rest in peace.
ultimately got offers from all three of those. I also got some thanks, but no thanks from other locations. But those are the three that gave me offers. Decided not to do the contract at Republic and started at Coletta 2, Coletta Charters 2 in July of last year. And it has been an amazing run.
All right, first question. Do you have your Citadel ring on?
I don't. My fingers are swollen from the surgery, and I can't fit my Citadel ring or my wedding bands on.
All right, I'll give you a pass on that. That's for us Citadel people. That's kind of a big deal for us. So that's funny, dude. Tell me, all right. So when you left, you flew drones for 20 years after a stint in flying. How many hours did you leave the Air Force with, like flying hours, not drone hours?
So I left the Air Force with 1,114 manned hours, a little over 200 in pilot training, and just under 900 in the KC-135, to include just shy of 300 in the left seat.
Okay. And so you basically qualified for restricted ATP under the FAA regulations for prior military servicemen.
That's exactly right. Restricted ATP met all the requirements for that.
And that's what, 750 hours, if I remember correctly?
750 for military. There's some cross country and PIC or night things in there. But 750 is the starting point.
Yeah, man, that is a cool that's a cool little opportunity for military people to help you, especially if you end up leaving a little bit early. That 750 is a big help. Talk to me about. I'm interested about why you decided to jump back into flying and what that difference maker was, because a lot of people they're chewing on it, they're gnawing on it, they're thinking about it. But it's also nice to be in something that's easy and stable. So disrupting the apple cart is tricky. So how did you manage that, and why?
I had gotten very comfortable doing the drone. We don't say drone in the Air Force, remotely piloted aircraft thing, unmanned aircraft vehicle, whatever you want to call it today. I'd gotten very comfortable at that. In 2003, when I made the transition over, I thought I was going to come back and fly C-17s on the backside. The Air Force convinced me otherwise. The regionals weren't hiring. That was the lost decade of hiring. And I made a conscious decision to keep doing the drone thing for a while. And I had a phenomenal career doing it. I got to be director of operations, chief of safety, squadron commander, and I was doing some overseas work after my retirement, and Afghanistan collapsed in 2021 and the work dried up. There was still a very small amount of work out there to be had. But if you weren't already sitting in one of those positions, there was nowhere to go. And I job hunted all summer in 2021. I applied to a bunch of defense contractors, and a friend of mine told me that I should go do my ATP CTP. So a company called Mill to ATP, I signed up for them. They told me I qualified for restricted ATP, and I went to Delta's training center, the Delta Professional Services, for the ATP CTP course. And 10 hours in the 777 sim, I very quickly realized that there's not as much difference as people think flying a drone, a big drone like a Predator or a Reaper drone, than there is flying an airplane. How do you work as a crew? How's your scan? How's your aviation decision making? Can you follow a checklist? It's very similar. So when I did that, I remember one of the guys came in, a guy named Kit Darby came into the classroom and asked the class full of us, it was nearly all military folks or ex-military, with one civilian in there, said, "Who wants to be an airline pilot?" And everyone in there raised their hand except me. And it was because I had just 3 days prior to the class start been offered a job as a consultant with Mass DOT. I did the consulting thing. I did it for almost 14 months. And about 4 months in, I realized that I like to be around people. And doing a work from home consulting job just wasn't a good fit for me. I missed flying. And, whether it was drone or manned aviation, I had to get back to it. I bought 8 hours in a Cessna, went to a recruiting event for Republic, and showed up in a suit, had a nice resume, had my flight records. And they asked, "Are you ready to interview?" I said, "Well, I didn't do any interview prep. I'd like to have a conversation." We talked for about an hour. After everyone had left, I was the last person there. We hung out. I made them laugh, was myself. I was natural. And they're like, "Hey, you're a perfect fit." Not a single technical question on my interview. I think authenticity, which you talk about a lot at Spitfire, makes a big difference. So they said you'd be a great fit here. At the time, they were a little on the lower end for new first officers, and it was a tough pill to swallow salary-wise from what I was doing in my consulting work. So I said, "Hey, can we delay class by about 6 months?" They said, "Not a problem at all." And pushed it down the road, built up the chest, and had to make some life changes in order to be able to transition from the work I was doing to being a regional or entry level Part 121 first officer. And
Tell me what that looks like. What changes did you have to make?
I sold a house. I sold a boat. We skiddied down our outflow in terms of, the activities we're doing. Just had to really tighten the bridges down and be very conscious about where every dollar went. I even considered pulling some money out of my retirement fund in order to buy some flight time. And ultimately, I chose not to do that. I'm glad I didn't. Someone upstairs has a big plan on the way things work out. I'm guessing you and I are going to talk at some point in this conversation about mentors. I had a mentor who is currently the chief operating officer at a Part 135 operation, who actually said, "Disco," sorry, that's my Air Force call sign. He said, "Disco, I believe in you. What if you had an angel investor who would help you buy an airplane? You get your 300 hours to get to an unrestricted ATP." At the time, JetBlue was hiring like crazy. He said, you get your 300 hours to an unrestricted ATP and, apply to JetBlue. I know some folks on the hiring team there. Obviously, you'll have to interview. I was not willing to take that risk with someone else's money. I had 8 hours in a Cessna in the past 20 years, and my comfort level in just jumping in an airplane alone and unafraid, building single engine time. I was like, okay, that's a risk level that I'm not going to do with someone else's money. It was an incredibly kind offer from someone that I still talk to for mentorship, and I wasn't willing to do that to somebody else. In my own retirement account, if I got to pull money from that to make it happen, that's fine. But it was reminded me to be grateful for the people around us and to try and do nice things for others.
Yeah.
And I was humbled by that kind offer. That's a crazy story we could have another day, but
yeah, I'm interested. That is absolutely. And that's people come into your life for a reason. And it's awesome to have somebody that has faith in you. But also, I love that you're pragmatic about it and focused on what is best and what is realistic. And that is a tricky place to be, especially as you're kind of chewing through all of this. I want to know. So you mentioned that you applied to Swift, rest in peace, and to Kalita 2. And first off, is Kalita 2 like the remix? What is Kalita 2?
So Kalita Air was started by Connie Kalita, the old drag racing star. He had an airline back in the 90s. He grew it flying DC-8s and like 747 100 and 200s. He sold it to a company called Kitty Hawk, which was a shipping company back around the late 90s, early 2000s. Within 3 years, they went bankrupt, and he bought it back for pennies on the dollar. Grew it into a massively successful enterprise, Coletta Air. They're currently flying 74s and 777s. I think last year they won a $900 million contract from the U.S. government for support for DoD and mail worldwide. And they are, in fact, I think they're aggressively hiring. I saw something recently that they were trying to hire 91st officers for the 777 as they grow their 777 fleet. Now, Connie's nephew, Doug, started Coletta Charters, which is a Part 135 on-demand cargo operation, and Coletta Charters 2. Now, Doug Coletta's operation for the last few years has flown 737s and 727s, but the 727s are getting a little long in the tooth. So we retired the last of them a few months ago. And right now, it's a combination of on-demand cargo and scheduled service, if you will, mostly in support of DHL and some other customers.
Okay. Let's break down how your life as a like your piloting life when you're working. Let's break down how that works and why it works for you.
Okay. Great. So there are a ton of great things about many different companies. One of the things I love about Coletta too is that our schedule is fixed. It is 13 days on, 10 days off, and we bid it in 90-day increments. So I know what I'm going to do and where I'm going to be for the next 90 days. So when I start my rotation, the day prior to the day one, I typically non-rev out, or if the aircraft is in a non-typical location outside of Detroit or Cincinnati, they will positive space me there. I non-rev to my base. And for the next 13 days, Monday morning, we get up, we fly to an out base, we spend the day in a hotel at the out base, and somewhere around midnight, we fly back to Cincinnati. Offload the cargo. That's the inbound sort. The outbound sort goes out in the morning, about 5 or 6 hours later. So we typically have about 4 or 5 hours in Cincinnati. DHL has a hub there, and they've got a little rest area, a lounge for the pilots to relax. They've got some big sofa couches and things like that. My airline has a little I'm going to call it a hub or warehouse that they've got some sofas and things that you can rest and relax also. But after about 4 or 5 hours, you come back, you do the morning sort, which is the outbound sort, and you carry your freight out to, call it Tulsa or Minneapolis or Philadelphia, and you spend the day there. And hotel at the outbase is provided. Usually about 10 to 12 hours of rest at the outbase, and then you come back. And probably the hardest part of all of that is figuring out how to manage your sleep cycle and your rest. Night cargo is a little bit of a challenge. I listened to your podcast a while back, and I was listening to some of the Spitfire Elite videos talking about night freight and how do you handle fatigue at UPS and FedEx. And a friend of mine told me before I came here, he said, your first 3 rotations, you're going to question your life choices until you figure out how to get good sleep. It took me a rotation and a half. Maybe some of that's my military background, but about a rotation and a half, I figured out how to get good rest, how to make my sleep schedule work in that 4 to 5 hours of rest available in the middle of the night and 10 to 12 hours of rest in the middle of the day period. And I came up with a solution that worked for me. So,
yeah, I firmly believe after a lifetime in the military, turning on and turning off your sleeping is you become more accustomed to it, I guess, because we just have lousy hours. I have that doesn't mean if you're not military that that's not the case. However, my friends that I have that have difficulty adjusting to sleep cycles like that, my friends that I do have are non-military. Shout out to my buddy Phil. I know you're listening, buddy. I love you. But it's so hard. It is so hard, and that's a real part of the job. I mean, that is a real part. If you can't lasso that and be comfortable with it, it's just not going to be fun.
The nice thing I think I mentioned was we do this 13 on, 10 off. So it's a super easy commute that you only have to do about 1.5 times a month. And then when you're off, it's 10 days of great rest, great recuperation, but you've got to manage that rest cycle coming off, because the moment you get home, your kids are going to want to play. Mama's got chores for you, and there's some resiliency tricks and tools that need to be in your tool chest to be able to handle the off duty rotation also.
Yeah, I have found, just a personal note, where there are 7 people, including me, that live in this house. And when it is time, if I've got something that's a late start and I need to get a nap, that has been very, very challenging because everybody's little. All the kiddos are little. They're all doing, whether they're playing or arguing or laughing or crying or whatever, those things, those are, even with the white noise machine and earplugs and all the things, that has been one of the trickier needles to thread. And so I'm certainly still trying to look for the perfect way to do that.
And maybe perfect isn't the right answer. Maybe just doing the best we can and being kind to ourselves with the outcome.
Yeah, that probably is the most important part, is being kind to yourself, and crushing a bunch of coffee.
Yeah, I definitely probably do a bit more energy drinks than I should be doing, or pre-workout.
Pre-workout, yeah. I just call it pre-work. I don't call it
pre-work. Yeah, exactly.
Timothy P. Pope is a certified financial planner dedicated to guiding professional pilots through smart financial planning. Whether it's saving for retirement, investment management, a seamless military transition, or strategic tax planning, Tim is your trusted financial partner. Also, you can join Tim as he leads engaging discussions on personal finance and strategies for professional pilots on the brand new Pilot Money podcast. Timothy P. Pope, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. Tell me, are you mostly staying in the U.S.?
So our operation has really 3 legs. We have the scheduled service for DHL, which is out of Cincinnati. We have a Miami operation that ebbs and flows, called in support of a freight shipper down there called IBC, and they have a Part 135 operation also. But we fly in support of them. And the Miami flying, I got very lucky. I was able to hold it as a mid-level first officer. Although when we upgraded the 7-2 folks, I got displaced back to Cincinnati a few weeks ago. But I held Miami for about 9 months. And the Miami flying was to places like Haiti, San Pedro Sula in Honduras, Jamaica. I think I had a Turks and Caicos run, a bunch of runs to Cuba, which was something in my Air Force career I never would have imagined, landing in Havana or Camagüey or Holguín or the other Cuban airport. So Miami flying is mostly Caribbean international.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
Talk to me about, Haiti's very unstable in the news, at least. How is the experience at the airport?
So we don't leave the airport. That's rule number 1. We fly in. The ground team for DHL would show up and unload the aircraft. We would wait a little while. They would load us back up and we would fly out. Haiti is non-radar controlled. So it's old school position reporting, position time altitude, position time position, if I remember correctly from my early Air Force HF radio days. It's non-radar controlled airspace. So everything is done on timing and deconfliction. And I've gone in there behind JetBlue, or I think I saw Envoy and American in there a couple of times. JetBlue, I saw in there a pretty good bit. We go in and you may have to hold a few turns in holding. There's no parallel taxiway, so all your turns are on the runway. And it's one of those special call airports that you really want to be familiar with going in. You're not going to have good NavAid support. You're not going to have good ATIS support. You're going to have someone on a radio, and you're going to have a piece of pavement. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the things that I love, you always send me these cool photos from wherever you are in the world, and especially the Caribbean fly-in. It just seems like you guys are doing so many cool things. Has it been a really fun experience? Do you feel like, man, this is what I'm talking about? This is way better than flying drones.
Every day I go fly, my captains laugh at me because the whole flight I'm staring out the window going, there's Key West. Oh, wow, we're over Cuba. It's beautiful. Can't believe how stunning these mountains here in Haiti are. Holy moly, that's Blue Mountain in Jamaica. The coffee there is legendary. It's been an unbelievable experience. I took off out of Cuba a few months ago. I don't know if you remember the big Northern Lights experience. We're flying between Cuba and Miami and saw this glow. We're at 32,000 feet on a really short hop, but we saw the Northern Lights from the Caribbean. It's been an absolutely phenomenal experience coming back to flying airplanes again. And for me, taking that joy and paying it forward just amplifies my own experience.
I want to piggyback on that because it's not just like, from my experience being friends with you is like, it's not just like you and the captain hanging out. I have this photo on my phone of you on the ramp at some faraway place with a bunch of rampers, and they're all drinking lemonade that you brought from Miami, like Gatorade containers full of lemonade. Like, what do you like? Talk to me, dude. I don't know anybody that brings Gatorade containers of lemonade.
So for my 1-year anniversary with the company, to celebrate my 1 year of returning to flying, I decided that I was going to I went to Target, I bought a 5-gallon sports cooler, and I bought the giant 3-pound, 2-pound, whatever it is, jug, a cardboard cylinder of lemonade, and a few gallon jugs of water. So I decided I was going to do something special for the rampers. When we land in Honduras, it's always hot. They're always, hey, can we have water? And we'd actually had a maintenance guy who has gone on to another company who complained about us handing water out to the rampers.
Oh.
That didn't sit well with me. I am perpetually grateful for the many ways I have been blessed in my life. I have been all over the world. I have seen poverty at levels in Africa or the Middle East, Central America, that most Americans cannot understand and fathom. So if I can give a water out to a guy on the ramp and make his day better, great. So I heard some complaining. I was like, you know what? It's my 1-year anniversary. I'm just going to do something spectacular that these folks do not anticipate. I got my jug of lemonade, jug. I mix the water on the jet. I carry it down and I set the cups out, and everyone on the ramp, maybe 20, 25 rampers, are looking at me going, what is this tall, goofy looking, pilot doing? And I set it down. I set the cups down, And one of my favorite places in Miami has a sour called Limonada Rosada. It's a sour beer. It's delicious. Absolutely love it. And I said, limonada. And they go, what? Yeah, for you. And within 30 seconds, every person on the ramp was smiling. They cheered at one point. I was like, this is so much fun. So I flew the same leg the next day. I'm like, well, I still have lemonade left. I'll just go buy three more, 3 more gallons of water. I'll grab a couple bags of ice, and we'll do it again tomorrow. And I land, and they saw me as we taxied in. They saw the tall, goofy first officer sitting in the right seat of the 7-3, and every face on the ramp was smiles. And I was like, oh, boom. There's a positive dopamine hit for me. I am going to do that again. I did it the next week. And then the following week, our chief pilot came out. He needed to do a little flying. He and I went out and flew. You ever have that day where you fly the perfect sortie and you go, man, I can't come up with a debrief item for myself. My first flight with our chief pilot, I flew the perfect sortie. Greased it on the landing down there in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, to the point, and he goes, wow, I'm going to have to step up my A game flying back into Miami tonight. And I'm like, that felt good. And then he goes, I get the cargo door open, and he's up there handling some paperwork, and he looks out the window, and the shocked look on his face as I'm handing out, my 5-gallon jug of lemonade and the cups and the rampers and the cheering. And we did a photo. I think I sent you that one. That was the first one I sent you of me doing the lemonade thing down there. And it was great. We had a great time. We laughed the whole rest of the week. I had a great time flying with the chief pilot. We did lemonade in Cuba. We did lemonade in Haiti. We did lemonade in Jamaica. Oh, Cuba was hilarious because they always have security around the aircraft, and they're not supposed to, take any water or cans or Cokes or anything. So I make this jug of lemonade. I set it at the bottom of the stairs. I set the cups out, and nobody touches it for 20 minutes. But the moment the first one does it, all of a sudden it's all smiles. It's just a mob. The security guys are drinking the lemonade. It's just, boom. It felt good. And for the next 3 months, every single trip I did in Miami, I made my big old jug of lemonade. And when we do the offload, there's a couple gallons of lemonade. And then when they bring the freight back an hour or 2 or 3 hours later, I've got a couple more gallons of lemonade. It was a hot summer down in the Caribbean. And when you've got folks down there on the ramp, hey, let's avoid heat injuries, but let's bring the smiles and let's bring the positivity.
All right, I got a logistics question real quick.
Sure.
Okay, so you got this big Gatorade jug, you've got the powdered lemonade, you've got bags, throw bags of ice in the thing ahead of time. Are you filling up the water in Miami, or are you bringing lots of gallon jugs? Is there a hose? How do you do it?
I've got it down to exact science. Okay. My Miami trips, I always carry a backpack with an extra change of clothes, my company iPad, my headset, my passport. That's kind of an important one down there.
Yep.
But it has straps on the side. So I strap 1 or 2 gallons to each side of my backpack right there through. And I am coming in laden with my backpack. I have a small fold-out luggage cart that I put the 5-gallon jug of lemonade on. I put 2 bags of ice in that, and then I carry a bag of ice for the aircraft to put in the crew cooler that we just for waters or that energy drink I might need after a 10-hour day before we make it back into Miami airspace.
Those tactical fuel bladders that they have inside it, I'm imagining some kind of semi-solid bladder full of water. You have a water bed that you just hook a hose to. Dude, this is so cool. This is so cool. I mean, I feel like you're going to be on a postage stamp in Haiti.
The Haitians were actually a little disappointed the following week after I went off rotation. The other first officer showed up and only had a few waters to hand out. They're like, "Where's the lemonade?" I'm like, "Well, sorry, I can't do that forever." So
Yeah. Well, but it's so, it's so fun because it's selfless. It's an opportunity to help somebody. It's a little thing that goes far, that like so far, and you get so much trust. I bet if you need something from those people, they'll go above and beyond to make sure that they help you. And that is because you never know when that's going to be the most important thing in your life. And that is so important.
Right.
Yeah, I think about handing out candy and stuff to kids on deployment and things like that. And that difference maker too, like that really helps out. I love that, dude.
I was an Eagle Scout a long time ago, and Eagle Scout motto, or the Boy Scout motto, do a good turn daily. I mean, doing something small for someone else makes your day so much better. Now, mentioned that I non-rev when I go into Cincinnati. They buy me I'm positive spaced for Miami. And when I was doing the Cincinnati runs, I started doing the completely cliche thing of bringing candy for the flight attendant, for the cabin crew, and for the in-flight crew.
Yeah.
And I originally had a bunch of Colombian coffee candies, and I would hand those out to the rampers. I was carrying them, give them out to the rampers, give them out to the flight attendants. And I had so much fun doing that I was like, okay, when I've got that, I'll do that. When I don't, we're going to do chocolates. I do not travel now at all, whether it's non-revving or on a paid ticket, without a giant bag of candy or chocolate to give out. And walking up to the gate agent and, hey, I don't need anything. I'm on a paid ticket, but could you take some of this candy? Is just a great way to make their day better. When I get on an airplane, I do this probably 75% of the time. I try to walk, whether I'm non-revving or on a ticket, I try to walk when I'm traveling onto the aircraft with a little bit of just the last 30 seconds, a little bit of a stern, serious look on my face. I walk up to the in-flight crew and say, I have a problem. And they go, "Sir," and I often travel in uniform. "How can I help you?" I said, I hold up the bag of candy. I said, "I have all this chocolate, and if I eat it all, I'm going to need a lap belt extender. Is there any chance I could give you some?" And keying them up emotionally and delivering the smile it feels great. They are always appreciative. I drop coffee candy or chocolates off with the usually the captain, the first officer, whether I'm non-revving or positive spaced. It's what I always do. I traveled to South Carolina with my family. We flew Providence to Charleston on Breeze Airlines,
which was there's only one place that goes that way.
Great, super fun little airline. And I had my 3-year-old little boy and my 6 and 8-year-old daughters. As we got on the airplane, they handed out candy and chocolates to the cabin crew and the in-flight crew. And I've flown Emirates business class, and its in-flight service is phenomenal. I got that same quality of service from the Breeze crew the whole way, taking my family to South Carolina, just because my kids made it such a positive experience for them that it comes back on you. There's a saying that givers gain. And when you do kindness for someone else, it comes back on you tenfold.
1,000%. And shout out to David Neeleman, the founder of Breeze, and all his people. I think it's a fantastic airline, and just some of my favorite people fly there. And it's, you always, the world's nicest airline is their motto. So you're right, unless it's Kalita 2 and you're the FO. So that's, I feel like you're going to make a really good 95-year-old man. Yeah.
Well, I'll be the FO for a few more months. I've already been selected for captain. I'm about 210 hours from meeting the FAA minimums. So our director of training is already on me to get those last few hours of Part 121 eligible time. So I'm going to change courses slightly. We talked about the restricted ATP.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you need to do to upgrade to captain. Everybody knows I need 1,000 hours of Part 121 time to upgrade to captain. There are some caveats to that people should be aware of. One of those is left seat time, pilot and command time in military aircraft for crewed multi-engine aircraft.
Wait,
And I spent
let's be specific. Multi-crew, multi-engine, airplane, not helicopter. That's very important.
Yeah.
Ask me how I know.
Right. So, and you can apply up to 500 hours of that towards your upgrade minimums at a carrier. Regionals and at Part 121 supplementals like Coletta 2, that's going to come into play pretty quick. At a legacy, you're really looking more at the seniority list before being upgrade eligible.
I think that's an important distinction. And if you didn't catch what he just said there, the availability has to be there for the captain upgrade, and his organization has that opportunity right now, and that ebbs and flows throughout the as the years go on. Different companies need captains more than others. So if you get hired on by, say, a regional, and this regional is has 100% capacity on captains and 98% capacity on first officers, and they hire you for a first officer, even after you have your 1,000 hours, if they don't have the capacity to offer you that slot, then you can't get it. And it's all seniority based. So if they're full on captains, they're not going to be upgrading people at 1,000 hours. And so a lot of people have kind of lost that over the past 18, 24 months, seeing the big vacuum of pilots replacing post-COVID. So yeah, good distinction, buddy.
Hey, pilot. Does your pilot uniform make a short flight feel like a transcon slog? Flight uniforms have reinvented aviation shirts with 3D stretch, stain repellents, and no wrinkles. These shirts are just plain comfortable and ready for takeoff right out of your rollerboard. Flight Uniform is trusted by more than 25,000 pilots, and their flagship flight shirt has over 1,500 five-star reviews. I've worn every pilot shirt out there, and if you know me, you know I only wear flight uniforms. Be the envy of every cockpit at flightuniform.com and get a special podcast exclusive discount with the code SpitfirePod20 to take 20% off your first order at flightuniform.com.
All right, so you are upgrading, and are you nervous? You got any questions? You got anything, like, what are you thinking about?
As I head towards upgrade, wow, great question. I have a small amount of nervousness. What I don't question is my aviation decision making, my understanding of how to resolve things in the cockpit. I have 4,000 hours of left seat time in a drone that doesn't count, but the skill sets are the same. I was really lucky to fly. My friend that I did my initial qual with, who's also a former MQ-9 guy, actually currently has a CJO from your airline and is waiting for a class date. Outstanding human being. He's the one who wrote my recommendation to get hired here. We happened to be paired up for my initial qual. We went through. He beat me up every day as we, memory items, ops limits, going into my pre-oral, going into my oral on the 7-3, going into my check ride. He just was continuously working with me on all of that. He provided a phenomenal example of how I plan to go when I go back for my upgrade of working with, I'll probably almost certainly be paired up with a first officer going through. But he provided a great example and of how to do that. Well, we both graduate. I hit the line. I went 9 months before I flew with him for the first time, and we went out and flew. And he said, "John Disco, buddy, you are very spoiled right now." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You have mostly been flying with senior captains. You've been flying with check airmen. You managed to get Miami, and you have been flying with some really, really great captains who have that high level of experience." And he said, "You need to go fly with, someone just qualified on the 7-3 to build your experience for when you upgrade, so that after you upgrade, after you finish consolidation, when you get that brand new 7-3 hire, their first time on the 7-3, you're going to be able to give them the right cockpit leadership and mentorship and keep the aircraft safe, keep the mission going, stay within the FAR requirements. You need to do that, but you probably need to do some time with a junior captain before you did that." So I wound up flying with some junior captains recently. It was a great experience. Some challenges there, obviously, when you fly with someone either new to the 7-3 or new to the left seat. But we worked through them. We grew as airmen, and I learned some lessons to take forward into my own left seat transition.
Yeah, I would say the first thing is it's not the training that's hard, and it's not IOE, like your initial operating experience, that's hard. The hard part is that first 100 hours after you're released. Your level of stress is pegged more than it ever has been in anything, whether it's military flying or whatever. That has been, to me, that first 100 hours. I was so stressed out because I felt the responsibility. I've done a lot of different things, but I have never been more focused on being on top of things. And the thing that saved me most often was having the cell phone numbers of the people that knew the jet, that knew the company, that knew the regulations. Like when, hey, somebody has passed away, or hey, we have some kind of unusual MEL, or you name it. Expanding my team like that was, I literally, on my phone, I have a whole folder of check airmen, a whole in my contacts. And I go from one, he doesn't pick up, go to the next. But they also all know me because I often call and I'm like, I want to ask a question or bounce something off of. And that has been the thing. Me relying on them has been the thing that has allowed me to thrive, not just survive. Right. So that's my advice right there for your first 100 hours and more. Still to this day, I still call. It's so important.
Nick, can I make sure I think I heard you correctly?
Yeah.
I think what I heard come out of your mouth was that even where you are now, left seat, you're on the 7ER, right?
Yeah.
Left seat, 7ER. Even where you are now, you still have mentors that you turn to.
Every day. I'm flying tomorrow. I will be on the phone with two of them today to talk about where we're going and the weather in Florida and things like that. It's, yeah, absolutely. Like the mentorship never stops. And especially when people like you and I have been chatting with each other for a real long time, and you reached out to me.
Years. Yeah,
you reached out to me on a private Citadel Aviation website, I believe. Right. And you're just like, hey man, we need to talk. And I was like, all right, let's talk. And we've been talking nonstop for a couple years. And I love that, dude. I'm like seeing you go through and succeed. It's just, I even saved your name in my contacts. That's a big step. Oh, man.
Let me talk just a moment more about mentorship, because I appreciate the mentorship that you've given me. It is important for us to go to our mentors and be receptive for what feedback they have to give us. But it is equally as important for us to be mentors to everyone else. When I was in the Air Force, I had a really easy leadership philosophy, right? Lead from the front, which is lead by example. That's whether it's the uniform right or doing the right thing in the cockpit, etc. Take care of your people. That means take care of your bosses, take care of your peers, and take care of the people that work for you. And attitudes are infectious. The mentorship piece really falls into the taking care of your people phase. And that doesn't have to be someone that works for you. One of the reasons I am so happy at Coletta 2 for the time that I have been here is I have managed to get 5 of my friends hired on at this airline. These are people like me who maybe had a strange career move and the dream went sideways of flying airplanes. And when I was a kid, I looked up in the sky. I could tell you what every single fixed wing, rotary wing guys, I could tell you what every fixed wing fighter jet was up there, every fixed wing heavy military aircraft. I was probably about 75% on the airline stuff. And when I went off and flew drones for a long time, I stopped looking up. I stopped looking at airplanes going, oh, I wonder what that is. That's a 767. There's an Airbus 320. I stopped doing that. I do it again every single day. I can't walk outside. Sorry for that weird side rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I've managed to help 5 of my friends get hired here, and I've helped 5 friends go to other airlines. Restricted ATP folks. I got 2 friends that started at Envoy like 4 or 5 months ago. One of them was restricted ATP. The other wasn't. I've got a friend who did just take the contract at SkyWest. It is so important to mentor those behind us because it helps us grow also. I did another mentorship event recently. Most of us have heard of OBAP. I did an ACE mentoring event back in July in Boston. I signed up for OBAP. I joined OBAP. I was going to attend the conference, but I had my PC. And I was like, okay, what can I do to help others in the way that I have been helped and that I have been coached? So I signed up for the OBAP ACE mentoring event. I signed up for 2 periods. It's a 2-hour drive to Boston. We had a wedding at the end of the week. I was like, okay, I'll go. I'll participate for a full day. I had such a great time on that event that when I found out they were coming to Cape Cod for the next day to Joint Base Cape Cod to the Coast Guard station 30 miles from my house, I didn't really give my wife much of a choice. I said, I'm going tomorrow. And watching the OBAP ACE, I forget what ACE stands for, Aviation Career Enhancement, maybe, something like that. It's a week-long camp for students aged 13 to 18 where they go around. And in the case of the local one here, they went to Boston Med Flight. We went to the American Heritage Museum. They went to the Coast Guard base. They get to see pieces of aviation that they might not get to see and experience traditionally with their regular airport experience. And these are youth who are interested in careers in some way, shape, or form in aviation. I'm going to tell a story here. I met a young man. His name was Jordan, not going into the last name. And I talked to him about my experience. Hey, I was ROTC to the Citadel. ROTC scholarships are a way that the military will pay for college. You owe them a little bit of time on the back end. I got a pilot training slot out of that. I owed a little bit more time for that. Became a pilot, flew the KC-135. I told him my path. And then the next day we went to the Coast Guard station and I'm just having a conversation like you and I would talk with one of the Coast Guard first officers on I think it's the CASA, their fixed wing, long range reconnaissance aircraft. He and I are talking and he goes, yeah, I went to an HBCU. Did I get the term right? An HBCU on a Coast Guard scholarship that I was able to, I do it. They pay a bunch for college. And your junior and senior year, you're actually earning credit towards your retirement. And they target a bunch of HBCUs, Hispanic colleges, those areas that are traditionally underserved by aviation. They target those places in an effort to broaden the experience and diversity inflow to the industry. So it was amazing. I was able to put Jordan with this first officer, and the smile on Jordan's face as he realized, hey, he's a junior, getting ready to be a rising senior. There is a path that exists for him to go into aviation, maybe become a pilot, maybe become a maintenance officer, maybe become an airport operations manager. There are a ton of aviation careers. There's a path for him. There's a path that will get him scholarship support, mentorship, coaching, and making that connection for folks it's more rewarding for me probably than it is for them.
Dude, I completely agree with you. And I need to reach out to the Coast Guard and get them on, because if I had to do it all over again, if I knew, knowing what I know now, there are two paths I would take. Air National Guard, to be a guard baby and get an airline job and kind of do them in pair, right? That would be the first way I do it. But the second way, man, Coast Guard all day. 1,000% Coast Guard. I didn't even know about the Coast Guard at the Citadel, and every coastie I know is the coolest person, right? Like, they're always the best.
You know how I'm like always this positive energy kind of guy. I don't know that I've ever met a Coast Guard pilot who wasn't smiles going to work every day. I mean, they have an amazing positive mission out there, supporting our waterways, supporting our coast, providing rescue and emergency support. It's a great mission set that's very rewarding for them.
Yeah, and they are always the most positive people on earth. It is very rewarding. It's so cool, man. Jonathan, I appreciate you spending your morning with the pilot and talking about just that attitude of gratitude, right? Because you are that tide. You are lifting all these boats, and I appreciate that. And I'm thankful that you let me be your friend, and you're just a fantastic human. And like, let's just bring some more lemonade. When you upgrade, man, it better be like, the people at Target should know that you like buy pallets of lemonade. That's what
pallets of lemonade. That's right. That's right. I will admit it's a little bit of I've got 4 gallons of lemonade strapped to my backpack. I've got all the luggage. I'm down there in Miami in the summer heat. I'm coming out just drenched. Get in the aircraft, get airborne. Oh, and some of our fleet is newer NGs, 73 NGs. Some of them, especially the Miami stuff, is older 300, 400s. And I don't know if you ever flew a 400 7.3, but you can only run one pack on the ground. So yeah, I'm just like drenched in sweat. We get airborne, and of course the cockpit goes ice cold because airplanes they tend to air condition it pretty well once airborne. But it's been a great experience returning to flying. I just crossed a little over 500 hours in the 7.3 now, and I smile every day when I go to work. I smile when I get to non-rev, like some folks go, oh man, I've got a deadhead or whatever to wherever. Hey, that's half the fun. It's half the fun. I'm glad for me that it's a single leg commute. I've got some friends that have had to do the 2-leg commute anywhere. I wouldn't wish a 2-leg commute to work on anyone. So as I do, I don't know if I've got enough time here to talk about some of the things I mentorship. Assuming someone is a good cultural fit, there are 7 primary considerations that I mentor these friends of mine that I've helped come to the airlines on. Assuming that they're a good cultural fit for an airline. The first one, who gives you an offer and a class date? We may all want to be at that Legacy or UPS or whatever that dream carrier we have is, but if you don't get an offer there, The rest of the considerations are moot. Number two, domicile. How does basing work? How does getting to work occur? It's more important than pay for most folks. It doesn't matter if you make, a tremendous $500,000 a year. If you're only home with your family 4 days a month, you're probably not going to be keeping most of that because you're not going to be successful in the rest of your life. So domicile basing, how does your commute work? Is it an easy commute? Is so important. I talk about pay a little bit. A lot of folks coming into the airline world don't understand about what's your hourly rate, what's your minimum guarantee. Let's talk about trip rig. Let's talk about some of the modifiers that affect pay, which is important. I talk a little bit about work rules. For someone who's never flown in the airline industry, understanding the work rules of your airline, how do you manage your schedule? And I typically treat work rules as all of those associated things that enhance your quality of life, enhance your pay, etc., through schedule manipulation. Those I usually put under work rules. My airline, our schedule, 90-day increments, 13 on, 10 off. I know where I'm going to be. I was able to bid time off for Christmas and the holidays and throw in a little PTO there to make it to RTAG this year as a volunteer. Work rules are so important. My airline, some of the best in class healthcare. We've got phenomenal healthcare. Very grateful for that. After that, after work rules number 4, I talked to them a little bit about number 5, which is equipment. General rule of thumb in the airline industry: the larger the equipment, the more the pay, right? Not always true, but a general rule of thumb. If you look at the pay scales of the legacy, you're going to have what's the narrow body pay scale as an FO, what's the narrow body pay scale as a captain, what's the wide body pay scale as a FO, what's the wide body pay scale as a captain, and what's the premier wide body pay scale going to be at the A350 versus the A330 or whatever. And even though you may have these different pay scales, being an airline with different hardware, different equipment means that number 6, seniority progression, is going to change. You might be an airline that only flies narrow bodies. Well, you're not going to get seniority progression at that airline that is reflective of people upgrading to a wide body. So seniority progression, what's the rate of retirements? What's the rate of hiring, growth, etc.? All of those things affect how quickly you hold a line, how quickly you hold a good line, how quickly you upgrade to captain, how quickly you change equipment. So I love to talk to these folks coming in for their first airline job about these considerations in general. That's the first 6. The 7th one that I talk on that's a lot more scary is how safe is your airline? We've seen that happen in the last few years. One of my favorite captains aged out a few months ago at age 65. He flew for 3 years at Pan Am. They were King Kong back in the day. He was a Pan Am first officer on his way to be captain. He'd done all the things. He'd run all the gamuts. He was a made man. And then Pan Am now only exists as a training center in Miami.
Yep.
I had 3 CJOs. One was from a regional, one was from Swift Aero, and one was from Coletta 2. And I'm very happy with the choice I made. And in fact, the chief pilot, when he and I had interviewed, had said, listen, I want you to come to my airline. I'm going to tell on him a little bit right now. He said, I know you mentioned you have an offer over there. My friend mentioned that I had an offer over there. He goes, I'm getting you a class date as soon as I can, but I want you to come here. But if you don't come here, he said, I will personally help you get hired on. And he named off some other ACMI carriers, but don't go there. They have troubles coming. And sure enough, just a few months later, they filed for bankruptcy. Coletta 2 has been very good at staying profitable. I'm not going to talk about company specifics, but the safety of your airline is a significant consideration when planning out your career. We have a lot of friends, you and I both have a lot of friends that are at a low-cost carrier that just did some furloughs. We've seen some interesting times now in the low-cost, ultra-low-cost carrier world. And, the airlines, everything ebbs and flows. One of the things I love about K2 is that if, you ever leave here on good terms, you're welcome back. And you can decide whether or not to keep that for the final cut version or not. But, years ago, as I understand, we had a captain who got an offer at United, went to United, and then got furloughed during COVID at United. Promptly came back to our airline. He had a couple of special needs children. He had a couple of special needs children. And our insurance was so good. He delayed his return to United until United said, "Hey, the clock's ticking. You need to come on back." So it was. It's good wherever you leave as you make your transition and growth in this industry to try to leave on good terms.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And those are great points, dude. And I appreciate that. I think that there's so much to give and so much to offer. And there are a lot of twists and turns of this industry. And how safe is your airline? None of them are safe. So you've got to, it relies on you to make sure that you and your family are saving and you're doing the things that are right. And you always have a backup plan. And your medical is fickle. I mean, we were talking about that yesterday. And so those things, you've got to be able to find ways to take care of your family, maybe even start a podcast, who knows? But man, I appreciate you. And I'm thankful that you do what you do. So thanks for joining us today. And thanks for giving and just filling everybody's cup, man. Your lemonade is good.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, pilots, that's a wrap on this episode. And I know what you're thinking. You need to make yourself a little bit better. So how do you make yourself a little bit better? You tighten up your resume. So here's what I want you to do. Go over to my website, spitfireelite.com/podcast, and you can download my free resume template. It is tight, organized, and it's the perfect pilot resume. It's just something I like to do for the pilot group, and it is free to you. So go over there, spitfireelite.com/podcast, and download your free resume template. While you're over there, look at all the services that we offer. Lots of great interview prep, lots of great application review. Everything you need to be a professional pilot is right there. spitfireelite.com/podcast. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next episode.